Only the lonely know the pain and anguish of loneliness. Dr. Vivek Murthy, former Surgeon General of the United States and author of Together, the Healing Power of Connection in a Sometimes Lonely World, writes, loneliness is the subjective feeling that you're lacking the social connections you need. It can feel like being stranded, abandoned, or cut off from the people with whom you belong, even if you're surrounded by other people. What's missing when you're lonely is the feeling of closeness, trust, and the affection of genuine friends, loved ones, and community. Loneliness can appear as anger, sadness, alienation, trauma, and many other upsetting emotional states. Shame and fear are an integral part of loneliness. Shame because we think the problem must be us, that we're not worthy of belonging. And fear because we think the loneliness may last forever. The shame turns into low self-esteem, which keeps us from reaching out for the human connections that would cure the loneliness, hopelessness, and helplessness result. Like whales, humans have evolved to live in small groups with strong social connections. When we don't have those strong social connections, our bodies go into hypervigilance with many negative effects on our health. Dr. Murthy says, when we feel lonely, our bodies still react as if we were lost on the tundra, surrounded by wild animals and members of alien tribes. Not good for the body or the mind. Researcher Julianne Holt Lundstedt has found that people with weak social relationships are 50% more likely to die prematurely. The effect of loneliness on lifespan is the same as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And the risk posed by loneliness is even higher than that posed by obesity, excess alcohol consumption, and lack of exercise. Other researchers have found that loneliness is associated with a greater risk of high blood pressure, greater coronary disease, dementia, stroke, depression, and anxiety. They are also more likely to have impaired judgment and impulsive behavior. Loneliness is serious stuff. Loneliness also has societal impacts. Dr. Murthy, when he was Surgeon General, traveled all over the country talking to people from every walk of life. He writes, loneliness ran like a dark thread through many of the more obvious issues that people brought to my attention, like addiction, violence, anxiety, and depression. Teachers expressed a growing concern that our children are becoming isolated, even or perhaps especially those who spent much of their time in front of their digital devices and on social media. Elsewhere, Dr. Murthy writes, many people use drugs, alcohol, food, and sex to numb the emotional pain of loneliness. In this way, the combination of loneliness and stigma creates a cascade of consequences that affect not only our personal health and productivity, but also the health of society. But the social consequences of loneliness go far beyond health. I was surprised to learn while researching loneliness for this sermon that the epidemic of loneliness contributes to the epidemic of political extremism. Again, I turn to Dr. Murthy. When among strangers with our stress hormones spiking from loneliness, we may be more susceptible to cultural bias, racial stereotyping, and discriminatory practices. We'll misinterpret social cues and see social threats where none exist. When the beliefs that serve as a basis of connection are based on hatred and fear, they distill a poison that slowly corrodes the integrity of the community and ultimately the well-being of its people. This is true not just for extremists like white nationalists, but also for the many less visible groups whose defining tie is rejection and hatred of others they view as different. So loneliness drives many people to extremist groups where they get a sense of belonging. But because that sense of belonging is based on shared hatred, it doesn't lead to healthy, nourishing connections. Maybe it helps to have compassion for extremists without in any way condoning their beliefs or actions, to think of them as lonely people. Loneliness is a widespread condition. Thomas Wolfe, in his novel, God's Lonely Man, writes, "The whole conviction of my life rests upon the belief that loneliness, far from being a rare and curious phenomenon, peculiar to myself and to a few solitary men, is the central and inevitable fact of human existence." It's likely that everyone here this morning, or almost everyone, has felt or now feels loneliness. If you're lonely, what can you do? Well, perhaps paradoxically, the first thing to do is to start spending time every day in focused solitude, getting to know yourself. You can meditate, pray, garden, journal, spend time in nature, whatever you'd like that lets you get familiar with your own emotions and thoughts and strengthens your connection with yourself. This connection with yourself is what makes possible deeper connection with others. The next step is participating in voluntary associations like BUC. In the last third of the 20th century, measures of social participation started to decline as publicized by Robert Putnam in his book, Bowling Alone, which I believe was published in 1986. And that decline has continued into the 21st century. If you are lonely, it's time to put down your phone and get more deeply involved in an organization that interests you. At BUC, you could get involved in the Saturday morning group that prepares breakfast for local migrants, or in the Social Justice Committee. We're looking for more members on the Worship Committee, and we need help with running the technology to broadcast the Sunday morning service. The Green Sanctuary Group needs to be rejuvenated. There are all kinds of opportunities to put yourself in the position to form close connections with others. Volunteering, being of service to others, is a tried and true antidote to loneliness. Because of the limits placed on me by chronic fatigue syndrome, I haven't held a paid job in years. I have been lucky enough to have done some significant volunteer work during those years, bringing deep connections, purpose, and meaning to my life. If you're lonely, find some organization that helps people and get involved. It can change your life. What can we do as a congregation when lonely people walk through our door? I think we're pretty good at welcoming newcomers. At least I felt welcomed when I first came here. In a lot of congregations, everyone talks at coffee hour with their best friend, and no one talks to the newcomers. But we aren't like that. It's a good start. What we could do is place some conscious attention to deepening those relationships, to going beyond small talk. I suggest that today at coffee hour, after the surface talk, we ask the person we're talking to 2 questions. Number 1, what is going well in your life right now? Number 2, in what area are you struggling? So again, that's what is going well in your life right now, and in what area of your life are you struggling? Listen deeply to their replies and respond with empathy. There's a Zulu saying, Umuntu Muntu Ngabantu. It means I am because you are, and you are because we are. It can be summed up in Bishop Desmond Tutu's favorite word, Ubuntu, which means to live through others. My friends, Ubuntu, Ngabuntu, Ngabantu. I am because you are, and you are because we are. Amen. Blessed be. Ashe.